Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, today we are going to talk about John Donne as a metaphysical poet. So, we already know that John Donne was born in 1572 and died in 1631. He was a great poet of his age, and today we will talk about John Donne as a metaphysical poet. The word meta means beyond, physical means this word that can be touched, that can be felt. So, beyond this world, it's a sort of imagination, and we will study it in detail. That what does further it mean? John Donne is the leader and founder of the metaphysical school of poetry. His poetry is a revolt against the popular current. First of all, Dryden used this term metaphysical for Donne's poetry. He said, Donne affects the metaphysics. Later on, Dr. Johnson called Donne and his followers the metaphysical poets. Since then, the word metaphysical has been used for Donne and his followers. So, critics basically, Dryden and Dr. Johnson were there who used this term for John Donne's poetry because it was different from the traditional poets which were established at that time. There were three schools of thoughts we will discuss in later. And John Donne tried to bring originality in poetry. Here we'll see what is meant by the term metaphysical poetry. The term metaphysics means something supernatural and transcendental. Its sense is what is beyond physical. It's concerned with fundamental problems of life and death and soul even after death. The term metaphysical poetry means poetry dealing with metaphysical subjects, something beyond physical world, something away from this world, something heavenly, something imaginary. So these subjects are nature of universe, movements of stars and planets, and whole relationship of man to God. So these are the subjects, that what is this world, what will happen hereafter, and the movements of stars and planets, and then the relationship with each other and the relationship with men and to God. So here we'll see traditional poetry versus metaphysical poetry. We have learned that before Donne, everyone was following the convention. The question here arises that what was that convention and tradition? Well, the answer is every poet was copying poetry instead of presenting new ideas through imitation. There were three traditions which were being followed: Spencerian, Arcadian, and Patriarchal. John Donne and Ben Jonson were against those traditions. Conventional poetry lacked emotions, therefore, it was artificial, so there was no originality in it. John Donne, on the other hand, presented his own emotions. Every poem by John Donne reveals his autobiography, yet it is universal in nature. Human emotion and feelings have not been changed so far. Therefore, everyone felt that Donne is talking about him. Readers were greatly impressed by his work. Metaphysical poetry starts from John Donne. Therefore, it is best metaphysical. He is considered the best metaphysical poet of his age and afterward. Donne's poetry is free from physics. Although Donne presents his emotions in his poems, yet he never appreciated the physical beauty of any woman. In love poems, he talks about worldly love and his beloved and moved, but the readers can never find any poem in which he talks about the physical beauty of his beloved. As far as later poems of John Donne are concerned, they are spiritual and divine. In them, there is no concept of artificial beauty. To differentiate Donne from other poets, let's take an example in The Rape of Lock Alexander Pope. In the description of Belinda, writes words about his physical about the physical outlook, but in Donne's poetry, this kind of appreciation can never be found. Thus, John Donne keeps himself away from the appraisal of artificial beauty of women. John Donne's intellectualism and wit make him metaphysical poet. Metaphysical poetry can hardly be separated from wit. Both these things are interlinked. Every poet of metaphysics intellectually describes things. Donne gives arguments after arguments to support his stance. Neither exaggeration nor artificiality is there in John Donne's poetry. He has used such words which are acceptable by readers. His imagery is clean. He does not write such words which are unnecessary. Furthermore, he begins his poems abruptly in a colloquial manner in order to get the attention of the readers. Thus, Donne's wit is significant to make him the best metaphysical poet of every era. Hyperbole conceits are particular elements of Donne's poetry. Conceit means far-fetched simile. For instance, in one of the poems, he discusses lover and beloved, just two ends of compass. Interestingly, both are connected on one side and free on the other side, but they remain within a center. So this sort of thinking definitely needs effort on behalf of readers. Readers must have thought about it and then can make meaning, deduce meaning out of it. This is what we call conceit. Conceit in simple words, if I can make it clear, it's some sort of far-fetched simile. So, for instance, in Valediction Forbidden Mourning, he shows the separation of two lovers through the two legs of a compass, who apparently are away, but in reality they are part of each other. They can't go away. Similarly, in Valediction or Weeping, he takes an example of moon and tides. He compares his beloved to the moon and himself to the tides. Thus, every poem of John Donne is enriched with conceits and hyperboles. Abundancy of these elements in poetry of John Donne helps us remember him first as a metaphysical poet. So we'll see further what are the main characteristics of metaphysical poet. We should cast a glance at the main characteristics of metaphysical poetry before we proceed to examine Donne as a metaphysical poet. Novel thought and expression, conceit, wit, obscurity, and learning are the main characteristics of metaphysical poetry. So, metaphysical poetry has an abundant use of conceit and wit, and most of the time it's not easy to understand. Sometimes there can be obscurity that makes learning a bit tough. People can't easily understand what's there. The reader has to exert an extra sort of energy in order to trace the underlying themes in John Donne's poetry. So his poetry is not an easy task to be understood. You need an extra energy. So all these important characteristics are found in Donne's poetry. So Donne as a metaphysical, when Dryden, Johnson and Dowden called Donne a metaphysical poet, they refer to the style of Donne. But when De Quincey disagreed with them, he toned up Donne's subject matter. His poetry is metaphysical because of his individualism and his quest for learning. His poetry is full of it, it's obscure, and it indulges in far-fetched conceit. It fuses thought and emotion. It's logical, analytical, and mystical. So this is very beautiful interpretation, description, and criticism of John Donne's, that he has certain different things that make him a metaphysical poet. Learning. And metaphysical poets were men of learning, well versed, people who had good knowledge of different things. That's why they could have given that knowledge in the poetry too, and in order to understand, the same was required. The poetry reveals their scholarship From this point of view, Donne is a great metaphysical poet. To show his learning is his chief object. In his poetry, he has twisted his vast learning. Due to his poetry becomes a very difficult to understand. In Donne's poetry, there is always an antithesis between natural and divine knowledge. Donne's preoccupation with mortality and death filled his poetry with a macabre element. In his fine sonnet, "Death be not proud," he hates death and says, "When short sleep past, we may wake eternally, and that shall be no more, that thou shalt die." So definitely it's a sort of a learning there. It's same thing in Urdu. There was a famous verse. Um, but then that the people can't be dead. The people can be alive even after death. They're just it's this concept is called unification with nature. Nude thoughts and expressions. Donne's poetry is purely intellectual and it makes an appeal to the intellectual. His thoughts are often new. He has expressed his thoughts in a unique manner. In short, he played with thought in the canonization, the flea, and that be not proud. One can easily find Donne's new thoughts and expressions. Obscurity, another element of metaphysical poetry. Obscurity means things are not easily understood. They need some sort of effort, and even there is some sort of unclear pitch over there. Obscurity is one of the important features of Donne's poetry. In his poetry, we find obscurity and vagueness of the subject. This is linked with sensibility of literary wit and philosophical conception. He frequently combines dissimilar ideas. This is his poetry is harsh, obscure, and puzzling. Sensibly is right when he calls him a very great and very puzzling poet, but at the same time, it's has been criticized that his ideas are yoked by violence together. So this creates obscurity. Means they are far away, far fetched similes, and the contradictory ideas are there. You can't easily understand that what does this word and that the connection between one idea and another word. It's a bit tough one to understand to make meaning out of it. That's why there is some sort of obscurity in his poetry. Wit. Wit is one of the chief characteristics of metaphysical poetry. The important feature can be found everywhere in Donne's poetry. It fashions his feeling and thought. Passion, sentiment, and sensuality are subordinated to it. His wit is unique in the discovery of comparison and analogies. It's realistic and straightforward. It looks to run side by side with humor and irony. The heterogeneous material is compelled into unity by the rapid association of thought. The flea is beautiful example of it. Conceit, I have already told you that what does this word mean. Conceit is an important feature of metaphysical poetry. Donne makes an abundant use of conceits. It's an instrument to reveal wit. The conceit is comparison between two unlike objects or things. In short, it's a far-fetched comparison. Donne's conceits are far-fetched and his imagery is obscure, vague. So we are going to conclude as a poet of love. Donne is metaphysical poet. For him, love is not physical but spiritual. Thus, it can be said that Donne plunged deep in the metaphysical pursuits. His selection of subject matter, his treatment, his diction, and style prove him to be a true and great metaphysical poet. So, Donne's metaphysical, not only by virtue of his scholasticism, but also his deep reflection, reflective interest and experience of which his poetry is the expression. There was psychological curiosity with which he unites of love and religion. Thank you, dear students.